Hi, welcome to the Drama Free Living Podcast. It's Dennis and Lisa McEntee, and today we're going to talk about the power of community. And Lisa, I love this idea of community, especially because we host a leadership roundtable and we're actually in the process of starting a new season, a new year, and people are coming into the community. And in fact, if you want more information about the leadership roundtable, we'll put something in the show notes, just a link, and you can kind of check it out. But Lisa, I think the thing that people tell me about the roundtable, it's not a podcast about the roundtable, but it's about community. But I've realized about community is that the power of, or the speed of the pack I run with really determines my speed.
Yeah.
And so if you want to really fuel your ambition and really grow as a leader, you got to get around other leaders. And it's almost like some of those things rub off on you. It's fascinating.
It really is. And just having someone to encourage you along the way, to kind of give you attaboys and actually know where you're at and what you're experiencing, because we all kind of have those highs and lows. And some days we just pull it off and we have serious wins, and you need somebody to share those wins with. And then other days, really, honestly, they kind of suck. And you need sometimes to just tell somebody other than your spouse or your kids or your dog. You know, you can't kick the dog, but it really does help if you've got somebody to be like, man, I just need to tell you it was a pretty horrible day today. And just having somebody there to be able to empathize. And
right. And it's almost like if you're really doing community well, you get these 4 core needs met, right? It's like you get this need of somebody present with you, that they get you. And then you get this need of encouragement. But then you also get this need of perspective. Hey, let me give you some other ideas. And then you get this need of I really just need you to call me to action and kind of really push me and, get me out of my comfort zone. And it's almost like if you're doing community well, you get those 4 core needs really filled and met. And that's when you have a fulfilling life.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more about those 4 core needs, it was something that Dr. John Townsend put out. And he goes into kind of depth on it in this book, People Fuel, but they're just fascinating, really what people actually need.
Yeah. So we'll put a link about People Fuel there too. But Lisa, you kind of found this jobs report, and it was a fascinating idea. Kind of share it with us, because I loved it.
So back in 2010, it was a Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum. And they said, okay, so what is going to be the top 10 skills of 2025 that we're going to need? So they were forecasting, okay, where we're at and where we're moving, and things were, moving. 2010 was not that long ago.
Right. They evaluated the past so they could forecast in the future. So
absolutely.
Listen to the podcast earlier that we did the other week, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, the advantage of evaluating.
There you go.
So this was fascinating. So the top 10 skills of 2025, this is what we were going to need in 2025. And honestly, we're almost here. But they said, these top 10 skills, only 2 of them were technology use and development, right?
It's almost like 2 of them were just technical.
2 of them were technical, which we're thinking, man, everything is based on technology, which is true. But the other 8 were based on problem solving, the problem solving category, the self-management category, and the working with people category. And it's fascinating because they were things like creativity, originality, and initiative. They were things like leadership and social influence, resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. These different things, analytical thinking and innovation, just things that, yes, we absolutely need to be able to use technology. But if we don't have the skills ourselves just to function in the pressure of life and the day-to-day of life, we're not going to be able to use technology well.
Yeah. And Lisa, I think it's this idea is that, what you do flows out of who you are, right? So what you do flows out of who you are. So if you want to do more, contribute more, it's like you got to be more, right? To be able to do more, you really have to be more. And so what you do really flows out of who you are. And I think that's really what this is saying, is really what's most important is who are you becoming? Right? How are you developing yourself in problem solving, your creativity, right? Your resilience, your ability to navigate stress, a lot of those self-management.
Yeah.
Right. And so really having that. So let's kind of just talk about community, because I think community is what builds that in people.
Right.
It's like I can learn technical skills from a book or a course, but these problem-solving, self-management, working with people skills, it's done in a community. It's not done in a vacuum.
Right. Absolutely. When we've got your organization and you are on a team, because that team works together to create an end goal, whether it's a product that you're creating or a service. But typically, you're grouped into teams because you're moving something forward, and that's a form of community. Your family is a form of community. Just the people that you put around yourselves, like with our round table, and these are high functioning CEOs that are, it's a form of community that they are moving their lives forward, and we're becoming, and because we're all going to become something, and hopefully we're becoming for the better.
That's the hope, right? So, and this is really found in month 9. We're kind of giving you a little bit of an overview of what Team Talks is, and Team Talks is a 52-week subscription service where we really give you leadership training done for you, videos and scripts, and it's all done super low cost, monthly cost, and you get everything done for you. So we'll put a link in the show. But
and essentially what it is okay, so you've got your weekly meeting with your team. And you're sitting down and you need to cover certain directives, certain requirements of what's coming up, but also it's a way for you to grow together, to kind of merge together, to build community. Absolutely. And so you sit down and we're like, okay, this month, we're going to talk about the power of community. We're going to talk about what we call ARM in month 9. And week 1 is a little excerpt of, okay, this is what this looks like. And then week 2, you dive a little bit deeper. And it's things that you can either just stand up and present, or you can turn into a discussion, or, even little things that you can send out and encouraging. But it's a way to bring your team into a cohesive unit, moving together not only on the project, the detail of what you're doing, but not only on this technical use and development, but on this other areas of problem solving and self-management and working with people that this report by World Economic Forum came up with. They were like, hey, this is what we're going to really need. And now that we're almost in 2025, I'm thinking, we absolutely we need to be able to problem solve together and have self-management and together and working with people together. And that's kind of what Team Talks helps you as a leader, you as a team do.
Yeah.
And so each month we cover a different topic.
Yeah. So let's just kind of get into like what month 9 is. I want to give you some ideas today. So we want to talk about with community, there's really some elements of transparency, honesty, feedback, accountability, vulnerability, and truth-telling. And what we have discovered is that really if you're going to build community, you have to have a measure of all of these in there. It's this whole idea of transparency because, people trust what they can see. And when it's sort of covered or it's hidden, there's not a lot of trust there. And really trust is this foundational sort of building block that you build with teams. Because when you have trust, you're going to be willing to go in and have the debates and have the hard conversations. But without trust, you're not going to have it. And really, trust requires transparency. It's like, I have to understand your meaning, where you're coming from. And you have to be transparent about your why in some of those things.
Absolutely. I was thinking we know someone that is working in a skilled nursing facility.
Yeah.
And this situation, there was something that kind of happened between them and another coworker, and then they had gone to their director and said, "Hey, this happened, and it just I really wasn't treated with respect, and I didn't really feel safe, and the reason that they needed to be treated with respect is it was dealing with patients and going through and scheduling, helping the patients, doing what they needed to do to serve the patients and the residents, I guess.
Yeah.
And this person went to the director, and the director helped him out a little bit, but the next thing we know, they ended up getting called into HR with this other person, and it just completely destroyed the trust and the transparency and just the way it was handled. And so now this person probably will not trust this director, or will not trust this particular skilled nursing facility anymore because things were not handled in a respectful, transparent manner.
Right. So I guess the question is like, how can you increase transparency? And we've got other podcasts that we'll put in the show notes. We talked about when dealing with me, values clarifier. So we've talked a little bit about this, like how to sort of like share what's on the inside. And I know that when trust is low, transparency typically is low, but that's not everything. There's also this idea of honesty and truth telling.
Right.
Right. Because, and I think the thing that people need the most but get the least of is like just like truth on like their own behavior. This whole idea. And we know that Bill Wilson, when he started Alcoholics Anonymous, one thing he said, all progress starts when you tell the truth. And so many times just like looking at it and going, hey, this is really the truth about this situation. Because when I know the truth, it's like my brain goes to work on the truth. And so when I know the truth, my brain knows what to work on. And so really having other people in your life that kind of tell you the truth, it's hugely important.
Mm-hmm. Because we can't necessarily, you can't read the message when you're inside the bottle. That saying is really accurate. I mean, you see everything with your own lens, but when you have other people that are speaking honestly into a situation or giving another perspective that you don't have, because I'm not able to see 360. I can only see what's kind of straight ahead of me and in my peripheral.
Yeah. And really, it's like when you're emotionally connected to the issue, your clarity is always cloudy. Your focus is always fuzzy. So the question is like, who do you have in your life that is really telling you the truth? And especially the higher you go in leadership, the fewer that group becomes and the more valuable that really becomes. And it leads into like that third thing of feedback. And Lisa, I think me changing my perspective on feedback has made a huge difference, is that, everything becomes feedback, right? Every outcome is a feedback. Every reaction from a person is simply feedback, right? Everything becomes feedback.
To you, meaning information.
Right.
It's not a value judgment. It's information.
That's all it is. And we'll talk more about this in some other podcasts because we're kind of thinking about as we think about feedback, but every result is simply just feedback. And it's almost like, Lisa, you take this idea of like, I never ever fail. I'm just always getting feedback. That didn't work. And I think for me, kind of looking at projects and almost looking at my life is like, this is one big experiment. Because even think about, for most of us, we've never been at this place before. Lisa, I've never been 54 before, right? So this is my first time ever being 54 right now, right? And I know what 53 was like, but I don't know. And so even like looking at everything in life as an experiment. And the funny thing about looking at it as an experiment is you don't always expect it to work. You're like, yeah, of course it's not going to work. Yeah, well, we just tried that. I mean,
that's the whole concept behind the scientific method is, you go through and you run through the scientific method and you're running down through and when it fails or when it doesn't work, you bump back up to the beginning phases of analyzing and discovering and kind of running it through, because an experiment is an experiment. It means, let's see what happens. I don't know. We're going to guess.
Well, and it normalizes.
You make that hypothesis and you're like, I think this is what's going to happen, but this is all just an experiment.
Yeah. So, and you think about it, part of the power of community is you have people in your life that are giving you feedback. At least we were just with some people on Sunday and I said, hey, I need to get some feedback. I said, this is how I think about a certain situation. Tell me, is this accurate? Am I kind of off? And they asked me a couple questions, and honestly, I was a little off, right? But I couldn't have gotten that unless I asked for that feedback. I would have never gotten it. And so realizing that happens in community, but they also felt safe to give me that feedback, right? They knew I wasn't going to be mad or angry or yell or scream or throw shoes. And so, throw shoes, right? But so who's
been known to happen?
It has been known to happen, right? So who's giving you the feedback? And then another one, Lisa.
Whoa. Yeah. I have something else to say about feedback, though.
Okay, say it.
So for me, I, for years, had a negative relationship with the word feedback. The word feedback to me was always, it meant something negative was going to come down. It meant that it was going to be something critical in a negative way. Because I think that was the only time that the word feedback was really used. And we've talked to other people and we've surveyed other people and said, tell me, what does feedback mean to you? And I would say probably 65% of the time, it was a negative connotation of the word feedback.
Yeah.
Meaning this, you're going to get booted or you're going to be told everything that you've done wrong. And being able to have a positive relationship with the word feedback. So when the term feedback is used, or when the term, hey, we need to have a conversation. Okay.
Right.
We turn it and we change that story, because the point of feedback, and I think we talk about this in the course Emotionally Intelligent, and which we'll put a link to that too. But the whole point of feedback is to feed you.
Yeah.
Think of me like a plant, and you're trying to grow, and there's certain things that you
Nutrients.
need. You need the fertilizer, and you need the sun, and you need the water, and they're all these different things, and they're feeding you to help you be able to grow. But if you have your sun and your fertilizer and you don't have your hydration, you're not going to grow. Well, a lot of times when we're doing something, we're missing an aspect. We don't have the full rounded thing of everything that we need to grow. Or maybe this project is rolling down project management, and it's hitting a wall because we're missing something. And that's where feedback comes in. It's like, hey, you've got the sun and you've got the water, but you're missing some fertilizer. And so thinking of feedback as something that's meant to feed you, to help you be well-rounded, to be able to grow up like a plant, is a super healthy way to approach feedback. So then when somebody says, hey, I've got some feedback for you, you don't immediately go into that negative space. You take it and you're like, feedback, okay. This is information. This is something that's going to help me. And honestly, you take it and then you evaluate it, because just because somebody says, hey, I heard that if you pour Coca-Cola on your ficus, that it will grow large. Okay, so I'm going to evaluate all of these pieces of feedback before I actually implement them in my life or in my project that I'm walking through, and deciding, okay, this is a piece of information. Does this fit in this situation? And then I can choose to apply it. But taking feedback and thinking of it in a positive perspective, in a positive light of information, and then let's see if this fits and how it fits, is so valuable. But in order to have that, you have to have the community around you to be able to give it to you. And you have to be transparent enough to say, hey, I would love feedback, or honest enough to be able to have that.
Yeah, they all kind of work together. Well, we want to kind of pick it apart, Lisa. And so I think as leaders, I think the thing we got to remember is, as we're giving feedback, how is this feeding people? And so many times it's not just fix this, this didn't work, but it's like, hey, did this well, do this more and more. Hey, when you stepped in here, this really works. So do that more and more, because it's not just maybe the quote unquote negative aspects, but it's also these positive things that, like, hey, you're really great at this and I want to see more and more of this. And it's kind of partly calling out the greatness in people. So at least we have this team member, right, that we're really calling out. We said, hey, we need more creativity from you in this. And it's not necessarily even an area that she's responsible for, but I know there's creativity in there. I know there's some knowledge and some ideas and things in there, but really I just kind of gave her the feedback. It's like, hey, I'm just calling this out and putting the press on her of like almost the gold inside of her. And so it's this idea of, when you're giving feedback, it's like it's feeding. So it's not necessarily improve this, but it's like, hey, I'm calling this out of you and I need more of this. You're good at this, and I just need the greatness to kind of come through. So, and isn't it funny, as we're kind of talking about this in the power of community, they all kind of work together, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
They really, really do. And then along with that, a huge one is accountability. And it's having people around you to say, hey, I need you to help me be accountable. I've got this project and I'm running it forward, and I need you to just help me on the deadline. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not sure on some of these things, and I need to maybe not shoulder it alone, even though it is my responsibility and my head is going to be the one that's going to roll. I would really like for you to come alongside me and just kind of help me make sure that I do a good job with it.
Yeah, and it's almost like this idea of accountability is the accountability. It's the ability to give an account. And I think we need people in our lives that we give an account to. And I know, and it's what's funny is we're talking with another team member, is that whenever, say with a team, I have low accountability, which has been known to happen. A great question is like, if I can increase transparency, typically accountability will increase with it. right? So the question many times is like, hey, well, I don't have a lot of accountability in my team. They're not really self-directed. They're not really being accountable. I always ask, well, what kind of transparency is there? Because it's amazing is that when almost like everybody knows the goals and I know like, I'm going to kind of look bad in front of other people. I think I'm going to like start working on that.
Yeah, I better do that because our meeting is coming up in 2 days and I need to have something to show for it.
Yeah, right. And it's like that's a way,
which is a form of accountability. Which like our team talks. It's a weekly meeting, and so you are intentionally getting together once a week, and everyone knows. Okay, we're getting together. We're going to have this meeting, and I need to have some movement, or I need to have some answers,
right? Or you're getting this content every week when you sign up for Team Talks, and you get this content every week, and it's like, well, now it's a form of accountability. We've seen leaders go, I did. Okay, when's my team meeting? When's my team huddle? When am I getting my team together? And it really has sort of increased the accountability. So at least as we got transparency, honesty and truth telling, feedback, we've got accountability, and then we got vulnerability.
Which to me, vulnerability and transparency are
very similar.
They're like next door neighbors. A lot of these are next door neighbors, but it's kind of all connected. They're different facets or aspects of community.
Yeah, and really the question here is like, well, who do you have in your life that you're vulnerable with? Because a lot of times people say, well, leadership is lonely. Well, at least I think it's only lonely if you make it lonely.
Yeah.
Right? If you're like, the command and demand leader to salute and stay mute. And like, I get it. It can be lonely because like, you're the one giving all the direction. But if you're not vulnerable with people and sharing like, hey, I'm struggling with this and I need some help. And at least I'm always fascinated with the roundtable of just kind of what comes out. And what we've seen is that the people that are the most vulnerable really grow the fastest. They succeed the most. Right? They actually make the most money. The ones that are more vulnerable actually succeed faster.
Well, and I think part of that is we all only have a certain level or amount of gifts, talents, and skills.
Yeah.
And there's only so much that I am capable of as an individual. I can't do it all. But when I am vulnerable and I'm open myself up and say, hey, I'm kind of weak in this area of marketing or whatever that area is, and actually being vulnerable and opening up and saying, hey, I'm kind of walking on eggshells here and I don't really know, and pulling someone alongside you that can be that counterpart to you. It'd be like, okay, that's all right, but we can figure it out. But sometimes we are so afraid of how we look in front of someone else that we feel like we need to present ourselves as being fully competent in every area, and we have to be 10-10 on all of these things. Otherwise, we're going to look bad. Well, I'll be totally honest with you. You're going to look bad if you portray yourself as 10-10 on all of these skills and aspects, and you're really only a 3 or a 5 in some of them. That's when you're going to look bad. But you're actually going to come across in a position of strength when you say, hey, I'm really great at these things, but on these things, I'm going to need someone to just kind of partner with me. I'm going to need somebody to ask questions to. I can quarterback it, but I'm going to need someone that has a little bit more expertise in these areas.
Right. And Lisa, what I have found is that, I trust people according to the degree that they know themselves. Yes. Right. And if you don't know what you're weak at, it's really hard for me to trust you. And one of the best ways to sort of shed some of those weaknesses is through vulnerability, because sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so just put some sunlight on it and say, hey, I'm not good at this, or I'm not good at, and I just need some help. I need some support. I need to like lean on your gifts and what you're strong at. And I think it's just, and we've been talking a lot in the roundtables about just collaboration. And I think the problem is that, Lisa, we've never taught collaboration in community. We don't necessarily, we've never really been taught it, right? And we don't even learn it from school. Like, imagine if we had community in school where it was, imagine if it was this, right? It's like, hey, Lisa, I'm really, really good at math. So I'm going to do all your math homework and we're going to totally get A's, but I'm really bad at English. So can you do all my English? You do all my English. I'm going to get A's in English. And then you're going to get A's in math. I'll get straight A's together. That's called cheating. Right? That's called cheating in school. And so we've trained people to sort of compete like this and really not build a community and collaborate. And then all of a sudden we get out of college and we go, hey, we need you to collaborate.
And we have not been taught to collaborate over 20 some years.
Right. So, well, of course, people don't know how to collaborate. So it really takes this transparency, honesty and truth telling, feedback, accountability, this vulnerability. It's these things meshed together, sort of bake that cake of community. And it's super important that you have it. So, Lisa, big takeaway for you?
My big takeaway, which we didn't even talk about, but I really want to mention it.
Yeah, say it.
Is Brian Nichols.
Oh yeah, we talked about that earlier today.
This is fascinating.
Okay.
So as you're going through and you're developing yourself and you're developing this aspect of community and you're developing your abilities, including transparency and honesty and feedback and accountability and truth telling, and you're becoming a better person, then you can float from this area to that area to this company to that company because you have grown yourself as a person, as an individual.
Right.
And this was just August 13th, as a matter of fact.
2024.
It was 2024. Starbucks announced that the new CEO of Starbucks is the previous CEO of Chipotle. So Brian Niccol, he was the CEO of Chipotle. And he's now becoming the CEO of Starbucks. And okay, so what does Chipotle and Starbucks have in common?
Right, it's like Mexican fast food and coffee.
Yeah, I mean, they're not at all. But I thought that was fascinating. I mean, what was it that kind of was fascinating for you about that?
Well, you know, what was fascinating to me about that, Lisa, is that it's not a technical knowledge issue.
Yeah.
Right? It's more self-management, working with people, problem solving. I assume that's why they brought him in, not because, dude, you really know coffee. I mean, he might know coffee or not. I don't know, right? But, you would think like, oh, they have to have a lot of technical skill. But it was these higher level, quote unquote, soft skills that we say.
That
right?
aren't so soft. They're actually pretty important.
Yeah. And they're actually pretty hard, right? And so I think for me, it's really kind of fueled me to go, okay, what does Dennis have to work on? Right? For Dennis to become this type of person that he's going after, who does Dennis need to become? Because Dennis wants to do these things, but Dennis first has to become. So I'm going to take back and for me, like really just deep dive into these sort of aspects of community and really figure out like, how do I increase some of these? Because I think I need to increase them. Yep. So any other last parting words?
No, just the back in 2010 and the forecasting on what we actually needed in 2025. To be successful in the workplace, and that only 2 of the 10 things that we needed were in technology use and development. The rest were problem solving and self-management and working with people. And how valuable is that? That's what we need to learn the technical skills, but we've got to be able to learn the self-management and the problem solving and the working with people.
Yeah. And so we'll put a link in the show notes about Team Talks where you can get that. It's that 52-week subscription service. We just covered some things that were in month 9, but it's 52 weeks. It's over 12 months of this great stuff. So I think our work is done here. We'll see you next time on the Drama Free Living Podcast.